Hey, you guys, if you have ever experienced any kind of pain that you don't really want, I don't know what kind of pain that you would want. Well, there might be some kind of pain that could be possibly useful in your life. And I just wanted to let you guys know that my friend, Jade Stevens, my very dear friend, Jade Stevens, at jadestevens.net, is starting a podcast called Rise and Thrive. And she just recently, she reached out. She's been part of my Sipsang community for years now and has just asked to give a little, a synopsis, a little, Cole's Notes version of what we talked about last night in our Sipsang circle to get it out to you guys and see if there's some information around that you could learn about pain and how to transform it. So, you know what? Enough about me talking. Let's just get into the little conversation that we just had. Here, come check this out. And I'm recording too. It's like an Irish Spring commercial. And I like it too.
All right. Well, welcome to the Rise and Thrive podcast. We're here with Timothy Roy, and we're going to start our first episode of the Sipsang segments.
Nice.
So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to recap last night's Sipsang. We do it on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. MST. And Tim and I thought it'd be a great idea to help us assimilate the information that we're going through, and also to give you guys a little bit more of a introduction to what we're doing in Sipsang and let you follow along a little bit. So with that said, Tim, why don't you just share a little bit about Sipsang so that people understand what we're doing here, and we'll dive into what we did last night.
Coolio, Jade. All right, well, Sipsang, as you know, as you've been a member for years now. Lately, what I've been calling it is like a constructive conspiracy for people who want to be part of a solution instead of part of a problem. And it's a wine club, and there's a reason why we use wine. There's a technology behind the use of wine and how we can use wine to actually help remember things better instead of forgetting. So when we get together on Thursday nights, I always pick a topic usually earlier in the week. Yesterday was a random day because I gave you the guys the topic the same day. And as you can see here, the topic was pain. And so people will then go out and connect and try to pick out a wine based on the topic, right? So last week we did coherence, for instance. And people I always find it super fascinating how people come from their own experience, and the members say, all right, well, this is what this word means to me. This is what I want to bring to the party. This is how I connected it to wine. And then we start an open discussion, after we do the preliminary parts of, our Sipsang prayer and our meditation and all that kind of stuff. So, ultimately it's just a group of people who want to have more high level conscious conversation and connect with other people who are in that same kind of mindset. Because sometimes, I don't know if for you, but for me, the more that I get on my path of the inner world, the less conversations I have with the people that I would run about, just on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm really looking for people like that. So ultimately, Sipsang was a selfish endeavor at the beginning. I want to have better, bigger conversations. And
cool. Yeah. And what's the technology around wine? Like, why did you choose wine?
It's close to 20 years ago. It's between 15 and 20 years ago. I got introduced to this phenomenon of wine and how you can actually utilize wine in a type of wine ceremony, because red wine in particular has a very interesting effect on the body and mind connection. Now, with the caveat being said that you have to use it without going over the edge, right? It's not about condoning drinking wine to the point of excess. It's about, if you ever been around somebody who's been, imbibing on some red wine, what do you find happens?
The floodgate opens.
The floodgate opens, right?
And
there's
the truth comes out.
People have referred to red wine as like a truth serum, if you will. And so stuff that is in your unresolved unconscious will start coming forward. And if you're not in a situation, in an environment that will basically create a safe space for you to bring in a higher level of consciousness and not go into your story, because it's unresolved, what'll happen is your story will start coming forward often, and whatever is inside will start coming outside. And then that's when we end up, gossiping, talking trash about our partners, our neighbors, our friends, our families, whatever. Right. And then it comes out of the mouth, goes into the ear, programs the mind, which has actually been loosened up by the nature of the constituents of wine, which makes you more programmable in a sense. So when you have like garbage coming out of here and going into here, you're actually kind of reinforcing those pathways. Joe Dispenza says, connections that fire together, wire together.
Mm-hmm.
So when you add wine into the mixture, you get the neuroplasticity of the brain being able to have things move around more freely. And then if you get into the negative aspects of your life, well, then chances are you're going to create stronger pathways like that. Then those pathways, after the wine effects leave, then those pathways are strong and they're vibrant and they're healthy, and you're going to actually attract more of those things. So the idea is that to utilize that same opportunity of how red wine, there's lots of white papers out there that talk about how red wine helps with the neuroplasticity of the brain. There's recommendations and studies with regard to people with dementia and Alzheimer's and different, brain conditions, if you will. So we're just harnessing that opportunity. And when we have a conversation while your brain is in that opportunity, and the conversation is a higher level of consciousness, well, then those pathways are going to start firing, right? And that's also what we want, is to start having an easier time, having access to that kind of information, if that's your path.
Totally.
Being a path of consciousness.
Cool. Well, so we talked last night about pain. And I'm curious what brought you. I think did we go through this last night? Why you chose? I think Joy asked you why you chose pain.
Yeah. Well, yeah. For me, it was an easy choice because I was going through a week. I was having pain come from all types of areas of my life. From my
that's right. Emotional, physical
pain, physical pain, business pain, like all kinds of stuff. And so I was just like, all right, you know what? This would be a very good topic, because as you know, I procrastinated right until Thursday because I was in that pain and I was looking for ways out of it. But Thursday it got so, it was Thursday, it got so physical, the pain, that I was having a real difficult time concentrating, actually. So that's when I put it out. I'm like, let's talk about pain, and let's talk about whether or not we can choose to believe that pain is either useful, or if it's a non-useful thing. Is it something you want to avoid, or is it something that can be a useful constituent in your life? So that's kind of what we brought. That's the process that I went through and put it out there, and I loved where the conversation went last night. It was good.
Awesome. One of the interesting things about pain that we talked about last night is just how pain is actually very useful. And if you can get beyond the point of sitting and dwelling in your own story, feeling like a victim, oh poor me, all that kind of stuff, we can actually look at where pain is showing up in our life and use it to our advantage to get us to the next place or push us forward in whatever we're kind of dealing with. So if it's pain in a relationship, we can look at that pain and kind of see, well, that's a guiding light showing us where it would probably do us well to put some focus on.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Pain is just a signal, right? Pain is a signal for you to pay attention. I would put it in the same kind of sphere, if you will, as, say, fear, right? Fear really is just something about paying attention, and pain is just kind of when you haven't dealt or something with, some kind of fear or whatever. However, we looked at body messages, we looked at all kinds of things last night, but ultimately, if something continues to go unresolved, your body has here's how it's something that I call the path of escalation, quite frankly. And, because first of all, there's some kind of discomfort. And if you don't handle a discomfort in the non-physical, because the universe is trying to help you and it's trying to help you succeed in some aspect of your life and become more fulfilled. If you're ignoring it, or you're neglecting it, or you're just not seeing it at a level that's in the non-physical, well, then my belief is that what the universe is doing as it's trying to help you is it's going to start bringing things into the physical, right? So you get in from some discomfort, and then you might start going into some kind of dysfunction, right? And that's pain, is kind of that signal that something's happening in the dysfunction part of your life. And then if we don't pay attention to those things, then we can start getting into disorders and dis-ease, and then maybe finally enough disembody, right? So through this path of escalation. So pain, from my belief, is a signal that the universe is trying to help you see something, even though it sucks. It fucking sucks sometimes. Yesterday it fucking
and something else we kind of touched on. Yeah, something else we touched on was, pain is essentially intensity. So we're feeling an intensity, and just the way that we are, the way that we've been programmed, grown up, we look at pain and we feel pain as a negative thing.
Yes.
But if we start learning to look at it as intensity, I don't know if I'm cutting out or you're cutting out. Hopefully that's not translating on the recording, but if we start looking at that intensity as an energy that we can actually harness and move or shift, I find that piece really interesting myself.
Yeah.
And I was explaining yesterday about, I have a lot of tattoos, and in getting tattoos, you're going through a lot of pain. It's very painful. When people ask, did that hurt? I'm like, fuck yeah, it hurt. What do you think? Like, what a stupid question. There are no stupid questions, but what a stupid question. Let me just jab you 1,000 times with the needle and you tell me. But anyhow, just like, choosing to go through that, choosing to get tattooed, choosing to be in that pain state is probably a lot easier than not having a choice. However, it was still a really interesting opportunity to work with that pain and to learn how to shift it. It's like, okay, well, I've identified this as an intensity that I'm feeling physically. You could have an intensity that you're feeling emotionally, and a good one would be anger.
Yeah.
Right? That's a very hot emotion.
Very hot emotion. So, there's lots of energy for it that can be really useful.
Totally, yeah. So learning to identify that intensity and learning to, shift it and move it towards something that's more enjoyable or at least useful.
Absolutely.
Not that pain isn't useful, but learning how to, I don't know, how would you say that?
Well, I would suggest that pain is a great opportunity to pivot. Right? Do you understand what I mean by when I say pivot?
Yes.
So it's an opportunity to turn and face a different direction and make a new choice. Now, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that, hey, pain, bring it on kind of thing. Mm-hmm. At one level, I think you can actually say that, if you really want to advance spiritually, then you're going to demand of the universe to bring it on.
Mm-hmm.
Bring it. But don't do that unless you mean it, because it'll come. So pain is the opportunity to pivot. And one thing that I don't think I mentioned last night, which I think is worth mentioning, is the whole idea is addressing the idea of people wanting to get away from pain, escaping pain. Actually, and I think that was actually made mention of it. Like, I don't want to have any pain in my life again. It's like, well, because we're here in this dualistic polarity called Earth, or the world, it could be said that pain is inevitable, but it's the suffering that's optional.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Pain is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. But man, like sometimes I'll admit, pain just kind of grabs you and like fucking throws you to the floor and bitch slaps you for a while, and until something shifts. And like for me, I didn't have a real shift until we did our breath practice at the beginning of Sipsang last night. Right? Because I just even though I have the knowledge of what to do, my pain, because I had this scorching headache yesterday, and my pain was so intense that I was not being able to focus through it, because even the focusing caused pain. Mm-hmm. So I just did my best, right? So it's not if something happens to you and it causes you pain, it's like how fast you recover from that. And
So
you
good.
came up with a brilliant fucking concept last night, in my opinion. You know, when it gave,
Yeah, it was pretty brilliant.
it
I
was,
agree.
but I'm gonna hand it to Jade. It was fantastic.
Yeah. So what Tim is talking about is he gave us the task of coming up with a what do you call them?
An acronym.
Thank you, an acronym for pain.
There was basically an opportunity that we can use to an opportunity to pivot, right? So we're going into our pain, and how can we pivot? And I said, well, what if we came up with an acronym, P.A.I.N, that gives us a way to like take our perception, our perspective in a new direction.
Yes.
And Jade pulls out like it was literally like she uncorked some champagne. It was like out it came.
Yes.
It was great.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So you can share it.
I can share it.
So excited. You share it.
All right. So Jade right off the hop goes, push all intensity north. Right. And for me, it was like, boom, it just, I hit the full, I felt the full force of that idea, right? Because it was perfectly matched with everything that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But you're a perfect example of how Sipsang works with like, just being a sponge for the information and then being able to utilize it in a really powerful way because, bam, this acronym that you came up with was like spot on for exactly how we move the energy, from south being down here up to north being, more up here. So ultimately it's a way that we're going to start activating more of our centers that can actually make a shift, specifically in the pineal area. So
yeah, and something I was obviously not obviously, but to me it's obvious, visualizing and coming up with that was the map of consciousness, which we speak a lot about in Sipsang as well.
Absolutely.
So that's, people can Google it, Dr. David Hawkins, map of consciousness, from bottom to top. You'll get what it means right away. Can you share that?
Yeah, this is it right here.
Yep, there we go. And you can even, that's great because it's colored. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's very visual.
Very, very visual. So ultimately we want to follow, because like the higher emotions, the higher frequency emotions, as we change the frequency of things, the way that our neurobiology works,
Mm-hmm.
When we change the intensity and change the frequency of what we focus on, what's actually secreted into the body changes, and then we want the body to get more used to the chemicals that are secreted from enjoying higher level higher frequency level emotions instead of lower level, because ultimately what happens is our bodies basically become addicted to the chemistry that we produce when we just have the same thoughts that we have every day. Most people have the same thoughts yesterday as they did today, and they're going to have the same thoughts tomorrow, right? And some of those are constructive thoughts, and a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are self-defeating thoughts and thoughts that beat us down and stuff, which all comes from our training and our background and our backstory. But ultimately, what we want to do is start training the body to start experiencing higher level emotions on a more regular basis, and have that basically future self start pulling us forward while we pull our future toward us, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely. And there are other charts, the map of consciousness charts that they extend horizontally more with a lot more kind of descriptions, which are also very useful for people.
Without a doubt, right? And yeah, like David Hawkins, what a gift to humanity he was. He passed away a few years ago now, but his work is just stunning, right? It was some of the work that actually shifted things in my world, understanding about moving energy upwards. So
you taught me that, and that's it's huge.
It is, right? Mm-hmm. So
well, it's interesting too, because I'm into a new podcast, one I shared with you, The Lifestylist.
Yes.
The Jack Cruz interview, and 2 of the books in his bookstore are actually David Hawkins.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, he's got Letting Go and Power versus Force in there.
Beautiful.
So it's interesting because I'm starting to be attracted to, like a lot of different types of people out there sharing information. And what I'm realizing is a lot of it is leading back to the same place, which is cool.
Yes. After 20 odd years in this same, I'm having the same enlightenment as you are, right? I don't think enlightenment's something to attain. I think it's a something that it's an attitude that you decide to take.
Mm-hmm.
And something I love about you, Jade, is you're so aware of your path, and that makes it a real pleasure to be in your company. So it's cool.
Oh, well, thanks. All right. Well, the intention with these episodes is to keep them nice and tight so people can get a good sense of what we're doing, get a little tidbit, a juicy tidbit, but hopefully they want to actually come join us and get into the discussion and bring in their own perspectives and ask some of their own questions and get some of their own answers. So essentially, let's put a big call out to people, anybody who's interested in this work, to come join us, get involved. Tim, if you want to take it away or where you want them to go and kind of the next step to get involved, to communicate with you about joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sipsang, just for people who understand, so Sipsang came from a word called satsang, which means to sit in the company of higher truth from the yogic traditions. And I just wanted to couple in this technology of wine, so that ends up Sipsang, right? So there's a website that I have out called sipsang.com, and you can go there and you can request an invitation, and that'll take you to fill out a few questions and that kind of thing. Because one of the things, it's not for everybody, and so what that'll give you is it'll give us an opportunity for you and I to get on the phone, not you and I, Jade, but anyone who's interested, to get on the phone, and we're just going to talk about you, like whatever they want to talk about, and to see if it's a good fit, because we need it to be a community that's a good fit. And interestingly enough, when you go through that process, you'll end up at a page that gives you access to this paper called 85 Surefire Signs That You Are a Sipsanger, right? Just to see if it's really your thing, right? Because there's no sense in you signing up for something if it's not a good fit and you don't understand the conversation. But basically the conversation goes a lot like we're having tonight. It's a hybrid between me doing some coaching along the way and having some real organic conversation where your input is so important, right? That the community's input is vitally important to the conversation, because we want to draw out every single person's higher consciousness to the best that we can. And we do this all online, by the way. We're doing it just like Jade and I are doing it here, right? We meet on Thursday nights virtually, and we've been doing this for years now, and it's just been an absolute delight. It's probably my favorite thing to do, or at least at the top.
The dog.
A top few.
And one last thing is, the world is changing a lot right now. And I think anybody who's interested in this kind of work, or at least starting to get interested in it, has this feeling that, things are shifting in their world. I think in the world at large. And community is one of the most important pieces to have while we go through this shift, because you need to have people that, can reach down and pull you up. And it's also vital for you to be able to reach down and pull other people up too.
Absolutely.
And this kind of, it's a literal network of us pulling each other up constantly. And yes. I think this is just a really great group to be a part of. I've been a part of it since the beginning, and I'm excited to grow it and continue.
Me too.
Yeah.
I want to do this for a long time, Jade. These conversations are very, very near and dear to my heart. And I just, we've kept it pretty quiet over the years, but, maybe it's time to step it out and share it up a little bit. So thank you for this opportunity. It's amazing.
Yeah. So we're going to be releasing these on Rise and Thrive on my website, jadestevens.net. Tim will probably have them somewhere available too down the line. And we intend to do this every week. After our session, we'll do a little recap and help ourselves sink into the information so that ultimately we can serve our community, our Sipsang community, even better.
Absolutely. So our acronym, well, here's a big takeaway for people to make this extra useful, right? So the next time you're feeling some pain, you can choose to remember to
push all intensity north.
All right.
Yeah.
And as you learn what that actually means, it's like taking this ball and moving energy up into a higher center, right? And your relationship with that pain will change without doubt.
And your pain could potentially dissipate, especially if it's physical pain.
Absolutely.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Jade.
And we'll talk next week.
Sounds good.